Hello, beautiful Judah Nation. Welcome to this special evening, which is to celebrate and to sort through and heal on Mother's Day. So, tonight's going to be all about sorting through our relationships with our moms, getting free, getting healed, releasing some things that we don't want, and becoming more and more whole as daughters and sons, and as also for those of you who are mothers. So, first of all, let me say all honor, all respect, all love, all thanks go to all of you mothers out there, mothers and grandmothers, and special grace, forgiveness, and love to all of you who are sons and daughters of those mothers. Let's dive in first by allowing Judah to channel, and then we've got a lot of healing to receive tonight. So be receptive. Here we go. Hello, dear and precious ones, and special love and hugs, flowers and kisses, roses and candy to all the mothers, all the mothers, all the mothers. And for the mothers out there who are disenfranchised, who are separate from their children and grandchildren, who have aches in their heart around being a mother, we give you our special kisses, our special love. We hold you close in our heart. And for those of you who are wanting to have children and have not been able to have children, and you feel a sadness and a lack there, we love you. We're here to hold you and comfort you tonight, to encourage you. You, dear ones, are going to be the mothers of so very many spiritual children, so very many spiritual children. And this is a beautiful gift coming to you. And yes, for some of you, even a miracle to have that precious baby that you have been waiting for. And that little one, even now, is looking down from the banister in the realms of heaven and choosing you for his or her mother. Yes? Now, our mothers are the ones that we have chosen. This is the first thing we want to tell you, dear ones, to set you free. When you, as we spoke of just now, were leaning down over the banister of heaven with source, with angels by your side, that beautiful guardian angel that has been with you from the moment that your soul separated out from source, all that is, as a separate and individualized soul. Your precious guardian angel has been with you through every journey, every lifetime, every experience. And so just before you came to be in your mother's womb, in this lifetime, in this incarnation, you consorted with your beautiful guardian angels and with the Holy Spirit and with your big brother, the Christ. And you decided, this is the one that I want to be my mother. Yes? Now, we were recently working with a beautiful soul in another land in Europe, and this precious one remembers this scenario. She remembers her pre-birth experience. She remembers looking down upon her mother and father and her brother and thinking, I want to go and be with them because they so need my love. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was a lack of love there in the family, and this was what was compelling her to go and be a part of this family. Yet, of course, when she arrived under the veil of forgetting, which happens to all of us, she had forgotten this purpose. And instead, in the density and the hurt and the disappointments of life, as a very young baby and little girl, she felt the pain of not being loved by her mother and father, you see. And there was, in fact, quite the opposite, much hatred and violence and so on. And so now, as an adult, she is beginning to wake up and remember the intent of her soul, which was not to come to receive love, but to give it. Yes? Mm-hmm. And so it is in this pressure cooker that you call family that this task is completed most of the time. Not always, but much of the time. And so know that you chose your mother. So whether your mother is the most beautiful, life-giving, loving, nurturing, angelic soul you have ever met, or whether she has been heinous, rejecting, abusive, and all out difficult, or some shade of gray in between, know that you chose your mother. So tonight, begin to discern why. Why you chose your mother, for what reason, and how you will grow, how you will transform, how you will expand, how you will overcome, how you will now become the creator of your own reality, taking responsibility for your spiritual evolution as the adult soul that you are in light of your experience. We are here to heal you tonight. We will begin in this way. We will say, we tag all mother wounds in your being, in all realms of time and space, in every lifetime, every experience. We tag all of these experiences, both of being a mother, the hurts and wounds of being a mother, for even those of you who are not a mother in this life, even the gentlemen listening, we're a mother in some other life, yes? And so we tag and treat all of those experiences as a mother, and also all the experiences as a son or daughter in which there is pain, hurt, disappointment, negative neural structures that are holding you in bondage. We treat all of those now, in this now moment, release them, be healed, be healed, be healed. So listen with the ears of your heart this evening, and then allow the healing to flow in. When a painful memory arises, simply say, Judah, super conscious, please tag and treat this thoroughly until this pain, this emotion, this memory is completely neutralized of all negative emotional charge. And we will do it in conjunction with your consciousness, which is, by the way, infinitely intelligent and capable of healing your inner being. Good. Now let us begin. Thank you, Judah. It was beautiful. So Mother's Day. Mother's Day can be beautiful, and it can also be very, very painful. You're likely, as you're watching this, at the end of that day. But if you're at the beginning of your Mother's Day, or you're watching this at some time in the future, remember on holidays, remember that holidays trigger a whole big package of deep neural networks of memories for over many years. And people many times suffer at the hands of those memories on holidays. So be uber sensitive, right? And if it's not too late and you haven't called your mom, pick up the phone, call your mom. If it's been years even since you talked to her, you don't have to say a lot, but just say, Mom, I was thinking about you today, and I love you with the love of the divine. I love you with the love of God. Yeah. And hug someone who may have lost a child, or maybe there's mothers out there who've lost a child to a tragedy, a disease, or suicide. Remember those people on days like today, yeah, and be a source of comfort for them. And even for those who have never been a mom in this life, there are ways in which they mother or a mother for others in their world of support, of love, of care. And so give them your respect and thanks to remember them today. Okay, mothers, so important because the feminine represents a beautiful aspect of divinity. Now, in our culture and in religion, we tend to think of God as a father figure, as the one infinite creator, the seed of life. And God is that. But God is also equally a feminine entity. And so God is both. God is both and, not either or. Now, some of you choose to call God the goddess or the divine goddess because you are reclaiming for yourself your connection to the feminine aspects of God. Ultimately, as we become whole and healed, and we are in our I am state representing both the masculine and feminine aspects of God, we are able to see and relate to God with both of these terms, both as our Father and our mother. Yes, and we begin to operate as an individual person as both a father and a mother. So the people in my life that I'm close to will tell you that I can operate from a soul level as a mother to anyone that comes into my sphere, whether they're younger or older than me. And I can also operate as a father. From my soul perspective, my inner being can have the qualities and characteristics of authority and care and insight and oversight that a father has. So as we come into balance, we display both of these sides, both yin, yang, masculine and feminine. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about some mother patterns that keep us stuck, and we're going to do some healing work around those. So, one of the things I want to say is as we are moving towards reclaiming the feminine aspects of God, feminine divinity and authority in our culture, freedom for women, and that freedom will later buy freedom for children. It's important for us to remember that that doesn't give us the license or permission to kick men to the curb. It takes the seed from the father and the womb of a mother to create a new life. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that in order to sideline homosexual relationships, same-sex relationships. I am in support of that. Even in those relationships, there are male and female aspects and energies that come together to make a wholeness, a divine, divinely loving relationship. Yeah. So that's not the topic for tonight, but I just wanted to clarify that I'm not saying that in order to exclude same-sex relationships. Okay. We must, however, remember that we cannot kick our fathers to the curb, for without them, there is no seed for new life. Yes. And if there's no seed for new life, then guess what? Everything is doomed to die. And so, women, we have to work towards forgiving men, receiving them, loving them. Yeah. Now, remember, I said just a few moments ago that as we come into our enlightened state, we are able to act as both a father or a mother to anyone in our world. So, there are moments in which, from a divine standpoint, I act as Judah, as a mother to Chuck, who is my husband. He is my equal, he is my partner. But also in the realm of the soul, I can act from a divine standpoint as a mother, a spiritual mother, for informing or directing or shepherding or enlightening his spiritual journey in certain aspects. In the same way, he can at times act as a father figure from a soul standpoint, a divine father guiding and directing me. Okay? So this is not codependency. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about surrendering our power to someone else and becoming childlike in the wrong kind of way and submitting to an ego power state in someone else and being less than that. No, I'm talking about instructing from the soul. Yeah? Okay. Our relationship with our mother is the most important and influential in our lives. Why? Because, yes, the father gave the seed, but guess what? All of our first moments, even those first 9 months, and the thoughts and impressions of our mother, the feelings, everything going on in the being of our mother was impacting our earliest development and impressions of life. We were uniquely shielded and fed by our mothers in our mother's womb. There is no stronger bond than that. There is no stronger bond than that. So even if I'm speaking to you tonight and you have deep pain with your mother, perhaps even a very abusive or rejecting mother, perhaps your mother has cut you out of her life, or perhaps you have cut your mother out of your life. Understand that everything I'm saying tonight still applies to you because physically removing someone from your life does not heal your inner being, right? Okay. Even if you're separated from birth, your relationship with your mother is very informative of who you are. Now, almost all of us, with very few exceptions, feel let down and disappointed by our mothers. Why? Because we began our life being completely, totally nurtured and cared for in the womb of our mother. But guess what? Moms are human beings. Moms are human beings. And some of our mothers literally never had even a single moment of experiencing unconditional love from anyone. And some of those mothers have had moments of experiencing unconditional love and giving unconditional love. But just because you feed a dog once a month or once a year doesn't mean it's healthy, right? Just because you pat your dog on the head once a month and give it a big hug and a pat doesn't mean it feels loved, right? So there are almost impossible expectations of our mothers. Yeah. Our mothers grew up in their own context of life, in the density and difficulty of life. They had their own challenges. And I can promise you this, no matter how terrible your mother your mother was, your mother literally was doing the best that she could, given the light, the level of consciousness, the circumstances she was in, the environment that she was in. She literally was doing her best. Yeah. So there are impossible expectations of our mothers and of the role of motherhood. There are so many cultural ideologies about what it means to be a good mom. For instance, good mothers should be like June Cleaver. When the husband comes home at night, the house should be clean. She should be perfectly dressed with her makeup on and her high heels and her smile. And even if she worked an 8-hour day, somehow she's still going to manage to be able to have some sort of emotional reserves left to make her husband and her children and everybody else happy. Yeah. So all of these are ridiculous standards that we must free ourselves from. I will tell you that I rarely ever cook for Chuck. Rarely, rarely. You know what? It's not an expectation he has of me. When he leaves work, he stops and gets whatever he wants at the store, and I have whatever I want that's in the fridge, and we heat it up and sit down and eat together. And he does not have any expectation of what I should be as a wife. He has released me from all of that. So if I do cook something for him or do something for him, it's just a cherry on top of the ice cream, right? It's just an added blessing. Now, we have these cultural ideas that are deeply conditioned into mom, and they create so much shame and guilt. Ugh. Guilt is like a package that moms have, and it's so disgusting, and it is the biggest energy sucker. Ideologies such as mothers should be infinitely patient, never lose their temper, especially with children. They should be infinitely loving and wise. They should be available 24/7. My oldest daughter is a young mother of young children, and this is the reality of raising young children, literally being available to them 24/7. But young mothers need an hour or two to be completely alone without anybody wanting, needing, asking something of them. So if you are in relationship with a young mother and you care about them, make sure that they are getting some time to be alone with the self. My daughter said to me one day, she had an unusual opportunity to be alone for the afternoon. And she said, "Oh, I realized I actually have an inner self in there. Yeah, a higher self." We need time to connect with our higher self. There are other cultural ideologies. Things have changed, right? As feminism has come about and women are fighting for more equality, fighting being a key word that we need to think about there. Women are contributing to the family finances. As a matter of fact, for I would say most families cannot make it financially in the economy that we're in unless the wife is working in some fashion and bringing in some sort of income. Now, when I was a little girl, most moms were still stay at home moms. Yeah. My mom was a stay at home mom through my entire life, even though she had a college degree. Now, I fully support women working outside the home if they want to, but without all these baggage of expectations. Yeah. And so women are like that old commercial that was running when I was a little girl. I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never, never, never let you forget you're a man, 'cause I'm a woman. Anjali, that was a perfume commercial. That shows you how old I am that I just sang that song for you. But this was like a thing, right? I mean, I'm so cool. I'm such a super woman. I'm so freaking amazing that I can go to work and bring home a paycheck and pay the bills and still be sexy at the end of the day. Okay, well, this is all just bonkers. Bonkers. Women are expected to run an impeccable household, even if they work, right? I mean, statistically, women still do the vast majority of housework in the house, even if they are working full time. And women are expected as mothers to always support their children and husbands. Yeah. And so if the husband's making a fool of themselves, being ridiculous, making stupid decisions, being a drunk, whatever it is that they're doing, the mother is still, as the wife, expected to support her man. You remember that song? Stand by your man. Yeah. Yeah. So I had a lot of that cultural conditioning. As a matter of fact, I was overtly taught in my religion that divorce is a sin. And that if you divorce, well, first of all, women weren't allowed to have any spiritual leadership in the churches that I was part of, the Christian faith, unless they were teaching women. They could only teach women or children. Yeah. So there were limits to the influence they could have in the church, because if you gave them too much influence, they might be a Jezebel and try to take over. So, but in the churches that I was in, it was overtly taught that a divorced person then has lost their opportunity to be of any influence in the spiritual realm at all, of any use or benefit to anyone on a spiritual level. Nonsense and hogwash. So, as adults, we can get caught up in blaming our mothers, wanting to fix our mothers, wanting them to be different than what they are, wanting them to change. We can become focused on their flaws, mhm, rather than being grateful for whatever beauty there was in them. Even if your mother never did anything else for you, but just made sure you had a roof over your head and food in your mouth, isn't that something beautiful? Because there are some mothers in this world that would give anything just to be able to feed their children or give them a home. As adults, we may have distanced ourselves from our moms, either physically, moved away, and inwardly thought, "Oh, great, now I'm not gonna be near my mom." Yeah, or maybe emotionally, we've moved away from our moms. We've just put this distance or separateness. And sometimes there are very valid reasons why we make that choice, because our moms can be abusive or difficult. My mom was, in my experience and from my point of view and understanding, she was undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. And borderline personality disorder is different than bipolar, but it's a very, very serious mental illness. And it's statistically, not from Judah's perspective, but statistically, it's really rarely ever healed. And so even when people receive a lot of assistance, it's really just to help them kind of cope with day-to-day life. Well, there are reasons why my mom was borderline personality disorder. And just a brief, insight into that, it's kind of a syndrome in which it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. So you can be real loving and kind and compassionate, and then flip a switch and then be really dangerously out of control of your emotions and angry and so on. And she was also very depressed. But this was a secret that my mom carried her whole life. She didn't tell me about this secret, this thing that happened to her, until I was nearly 50 years old. So that will tell you how long she carried this in herself. And it was that when she was a teenager, she was grounded by her parents. I believe she was a junior in high school. And she had a friend over spending the night, and they decided to sneak out and hang out with some boys. And when they climbed back through the window, got into bed, she and her dad discovered that she'd been out, and he pulled off his belt and he beat her with the belt buckle over and over and over and over. And her friend was lying there in the bed with her, horrified at what was going on. My grandmother was watching it, and perhaps her sisters, I don't know about that, and allowed this to go on. And he literally beat her till she was nearly dead. And finally, my grandmother screamed out, my mom's mother, and said, "Stop, you're going to kill her." Now, my mother was never taken to the doctor. She was never given any medical care or emotional care for what she went through. She was beaten within an inch of her life. And she carried the shame of that her whole entire life. And to my knowledge, I may be the only person that she ever told about this. And to my knowledge, she never received any comfort or support or even an apology from her mother or anyone in her family that witnessed what happened to her. So understand that sometimes I suffered in many ways at the hands of my mother in our relationship. And my mother was also very loving and good to me as well. She was as good to me as she could be. Yeah. And so we have to know that some of our mothers carry secrets of really terrible pain that we may know nothing about. And so the key is not judging. Yeah, not judging. So, for instance, when I was a young girl, my mother was very depressed for obvious reasons, as I just shared. But those reasons were not obvious to me. I was not privy to those reasons. As a little girl, I remember hearing my mom cry in the bedroom and cry and weep and tell my dad, she didn't feel like she wanted to live anymore. That was a devastating thing for me to hear. I was likely listening at the door because I was worried about my mom. I knew something was wrong and I didn't know what was going on. There's very little communication about it. And she would shuffle around in her bathrobe for months on end with the saddest look on her face. Now, in those years and those times, depression was still being treated in really heinous ways, like with shock therapy. And I remember my mom even going into the hospital for a few days to get this shock therapy. And the only thing I was told was that my mom was sick. But as I said, I'd overheard that my mom wanted to die. So imagine what it feels like to be a little girl and not understand why your mom wouldn't want to live, to be there for you, to love you, to raise you, to be a part of your life. So those are the moments when, as children, we make judgments of our mothers and of life and of our fathers and brothers and so on as well. But tonight we're focusing on mothers. So in that moment, I made a judgment. I don't remember the exact words, right? That was a long time ago, but it was probably something like this: I'll never be like that. I'll never be depressed like that. I will never be sad. I will always be available for my children. I will always love my children. So these are the kind of judgments we make. And these judgments that are made when we are very young with a lot of extreme pain and hurt around them are called vows, inner vows. and they really impact our life. They are like train tracks that our life cannot get off of until these are brought into our conscious awareness and we forgive them. So I'll tell you what happens here. When we make these vows, we either reap them in a mate or become the thing we hate. Reap them in a mate or become the thing we hate. So that means based on that young vow that I made, I was destined or doomed, I will say, to either become very depressed young mother myself or to marry someone who was a depressive or marry someone who is bipolar or borderline or something in that family. Okay? Why? Why would the universe have this sort of law in place? Why would God allow a child that suffered with a depressive mom to reap the fruits of a judgment made in innocence, right? Obviously made in innocence and out of hurt. Well, this is why. So that we can have compassion for the one that we judged. So as a young mother of 3, when I became depressed, guess what? My inner orientation towards my mom changed, and I could forgive her because I knew what it felt like to want more than anything in the world to be emotionally present and loving for my kids and not be crying and not be sad. I wanted more than anything in the world to laugh and play and enjoy my kids, and I wasn't able to because of the depression. And so that enabled me then to forgive my mom. So some of you, not all of you, have run from the opportunity to heal yourself by forgiving your mom. And so if you've cut your mom out of your life, that may be exactly what needs to be done. But have you forgiven yourself? Have you forgiven your mom? Have you done the inner work? Or are you running from your inner work? And so cutting our moms out of our life is not going to relieve us from the need to doing our inner work. And some of you will need to reconnect with your mom on some level in order to really finally heal. And I will leave that decision to you. Yeah. Okay. So when we get clear with our mothers in our inner being, even if they're dead, our other relationships begin to flow, flow, flow. They will shift and move forward with more love, more compassion, more ease, more joy. But when we're stuck with our mother, our other relationships will reflect that. Why? Because our relationship with our mom is the first relationship we had, and it is the most important. So if we're stuck with our moms, even if our moms have passed, if we have not done our interior work and whatever exterior actions we need to take to finish that work, then we will continue to distance from others, blame others, and our relationships with our partners and children and others will reflect this stuckness that we have. Okay. Now, for those of you who have parted ways with your mom, if you're doing your inner work, you may need to continue on in this way. There are moms that are so toxic that we should not have a relationship with them. But also keep in mind, some moms change. Some moms change. I worked with a beautiful woman who had, when her children were younger, was a sex worker. She left their father. There was a divorce situation, and she was in dire straits. And this is the way she provided for her kids. Now, her kids hated her for that and decided to cut her out of their life altogether. But this beautiful woman that I was working with decades later, she had gone back to school, gotten a degree in counseling. She was serving other people who had been in similar situations to herself and helping them get free. And this was a beautiful woman on a very spiritual path and journey. And it is heart-wrenching to think that she will never meet her grandchildren or speak to her children again. Okay. Healing your relationship with your mom, whether you do it one-on-one, face-to-face, or simply in your own internal being, by yourself, working with source and angels, this has a huge payoff for your entire life. Yeah? Okay. So, as young moms, as daughters, as sons, let's remember that our mothers have a context, and we may or may not know the context of their life, as I shared before. And our mothers, just like us, were affected by their own unique personal experience, their own conditioning, their own religious training, the cultural norms of the day, which are different for them than they were for us, their own marriage and romantic relationships. And they were impacted and affected by the way they mothered by the prescribed role of mom in the era or the culture in which they were raised. What it means to be a mom in India or in West Africa is different than what it means to be a mom in Mexico or in America. Yeah. Now, my mom grew up in the time or became a young mother in the time of Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock was a best-selling book in America, and every young mother in America read it and did what Dr. Spock told them to do, which, by the way, is a lot of BS since he's never been a mother. All right. And so, for an example, um, Dr. Spock taught mothers that they should allow their babies to cry in the crib, and that if you went and got them every time they cried, they would be spoiled and grow up to be naughty, bad children. And so many, many young moms in that generation allowed their babies to cry alone endlessly in the crib. And undoubtedly, they felt guilty and ashamed and tormented by the sound of their baby crying in the other room. But because they wanted to be good moms and they had been culturally conditioned in this way, they ignored their own inner instinct as a mother and allowed their baby to cry. So many babies in our generation likely felt very emotionally abandoned and traumatized by being left alone when they needed their moms. Yeah. Okay. Another thing, when my mom gave birth to me, she was she was put out right before I was born with drugs. She was inoculated and put into unconsciousness. So when I was born, my mom was unconscious and couldn't hold me, nurture me, nurse me. Yeah. She was also given drugs to dry up her milk. And I was given chemically laden formulas, which I was allergic to. So I spent my early months of life crying and being sick because of the formula that I was taking. These are things that our moms were victims of in the sense of the cultural conditioning, and literally were doing the best they could, but they had effects on us. Think about other moms of other generations. My great grandmother used to iron everyone's shirts, pants, underwear, sheets, and pillowcases with a hot iron on a stove. Yeah. She cooked she even ironed underwear, by the way. She cooked big, huge meals for her husband and children and her grandchildren. She cared for the grandchildren in her family. She rocked my father until he was so big that his feet drugged the floor. That was the story they told. Now, her daughter-in-law, my grandmother, was raised in the era of the 50s and 60s. She was a mom in the 50s and 60s. And back then, moms were given mommy's little helpers, Valium. And so my dear grandmother was addicted to Valium her whole entire life. Because when mothers were so strapped to the role, strapped to the egoically conditioned, culturally, religiously conditioned role of motherhood and what it's like and what it's supposed to be, that they're dying inside, they are given Valiums, mother's little helpers. And today it's a glass of wine or microdosing mushrooms or Prozac, whatever it is that moms do to try to survive emotionally. Okay. So forgive your mom and get unstuck. One of the ways you do that is by viewing her within the context of her life and experience. Every mother is doing the best they can with the level of consciousness, the conditioning, and the experience that they've had. Now, under the patriarchy of religion, political, and cultural expectations, the possibilities for females have been massacred under the pressures and confines of motherhood. So today, honor your mother, honor all mothers, and please honor all women that choose not to be mothers. Now, I have two daughters. One of them is a beautiful mother of young children. She does a fantastic job. And then my youngest daughter has chosen not to be a mother. And she is doing a fantastic job of pursuing her love, her dreams, and what's important to her. Sorry, Jen, I'm going to have to. Oh, okay. Sorry, that was somebody knocking on my door, but they're gone. Okay. So, one of the things we can do is this. Stop asking. Let me go back. I'm sorry, Jen. I'm going to go back and repeat that last bit. So I have one daughter who is a beautiful mother of young children, and another daughter that has chosen not to have children. And she's doing a beautiful job of just being her loving, beautiful self and pursuing her dreams. So, one of the things that we need to do in order to be more loving to young women and to assist them in their journey of being their higher self is to stop asking young women when they're going to have children, when they're going to get married. There is enormous cultural pressure still for young women to have children. I've met women in their 40s that are still explaining every time they get in a social situation why they didn't have kids, or telling a sad story about a miscarriage that they had decades ago, and that has become their standby excuse or reason to explain why they don't have children. And we need to stop this, yeah? So understand that all of us in former lifetimes have been mothers, mothers of children, likely many, many times. So let's stop pressuring young people to have children if they don't want to. They should never feel guilt or shame or blame about that. Yes, some of them are actually here to become enlightened beings or to be spiritual mothers to others. And so they don't need the encumbrances of raising children. Now, on the other hand, let's completely support mothers if they decide that they want to stay at home, they don't want to work. Let's do what we can to support them in their decisions. Yes? Okay. So let's drop the pity looks for women that don't have children. Yeah? And let's allow for frank conversations about how difficult it is to be a mom. Yeah. I remember as a young mom, I was pregnant with my third child, excuse me, and my second child was right in the middle of the terrible twos. And I'm telling you, he was a holy terror, a holy terror. And I remember dropping to the kitchen floor one day and just sitting there and crying. I was enormously pregnant with the third. I was completely overwhelmed with this little 2-year-old and my oldest, and I was totally overwhelmed. And I did not have the emotional support that I needed, and I felt like I was in over my head. So let's allow moms to have frank conversations about the difficulties of being a mom, about the isolation, about the expectations. You know, it's okay for moms to feel angry at times. Moms do so much giving and loving and giving and loving and giving and loving and giving and loving that sometimes they just run dry. There's nothing left in the tank. And so why wouldn't they be angry about that, right? Now, I'm not saying, moms should abuse their kids. And you guys know that I'm not saying that. And of course, moms don't have the desire to do that. But they also need an opportunity to be human, yeah, and to get their needs met. Let's allow moms to express in safe spaces any unhappiness or anger or disappointment that they have in their role as a mom. Okay? Understand also a big shift that we've got to make is understanding that women are more than mothers and wives. Okay? And they're more than women. Women contain a soul. It is the soul is expressing itself through the femininity and through the woman's voice and her manner and her body and her personality and her skills and her talents and her mothering. But the soul is more than a woman, more than a mother, more than a partner, more than a daughter. The soul is eternal. It is divine. It is the embodiment of both the masculine and the feminine. Okay, now also, let's stop mother blaming. Yeah, let's just stop it. It doesn't help anyone to blame mothers. Let's say to mothers, enough, no more guilt, no more shame, no more blaming. Let's just take that baggage off of their backs. Yeah. So, in our culture, there is an underlying theme of if a child is lacking, if a child is struggling, the mother must be to blame. Let's get rid of that. Let's start being a human family. Let's start helping young mothers, especially single mothers, to parent and reparent their children. And let's take responsibility to reparent ourselves for any lacks or areas, gaps that we have from our mothers, our experience with our mothers and or our fathers, or the absence of our mothers and fathers. Let's take responsibility to reparent ourself. Understand that your higher self is the mother and father you always wanted. So reparent yourself. Be a good mother to yourself today. Give yourself the love, the nurture, the care that you need. Let's also, instead of blaming mothers and blaming fathers, dropping all that, let's look at the institutions that are perpetuating these difficulties. Now, when I met Chuck, he was a diehard bachelor. I, on the other hand, loved that I had been married for 27 years. I loved the institution of marriage. I love to this day, I'm still monogamous, and I love that. I love being married to Chuck now. I love being a wife. I love that role. And I love my role as a mom as well and a grandmother. But we have to look at the institutions in our culture, and we need to begin to question them. And Chuck was the first person that would brought this into my awareness to question the institutions of marriage. It used to make me really upset when he would do that because something about that having that institution of marriage made me feel safe in romantic relationships. But I will tell you, think of it this way. If if there was a school in your city and the school was failing and all the kids there were not learning, or let's say half the kids there were not learning what they needed to learn to be successful, would you blame the kids? Would you say, there must be something wrong with these kids, or something wrong with the neighborhood this school is in, or the parents? Something's missing if 50% of these kids aren't successful. Mm? You might ask those questions, but what if every school in that city, only 50% of the students were doing well? Maybe the same results in the rich neighborhoods as in the poor neighborhoods, or the same results in the school with the best teachers and the lower, less educated teachers. What if it was 50% in all the schools? What if in all the schools in the whole nation, only half of the kids were learning what they needed to learn? Then maybe finally someone would stop pointing at the teachers and the students and the parents and the communities and question the institution. Yeah. Well, that's what we have going on in marriage today. 50% of all marriages are ending in divorce, including in faith based communities. So I'm not saying that I'm against marriage. I'm a married woman. But it is time for us to begin to question the institution of marriage and what is it that isn't working. And 85% of us as adults have experienced cheating or being cheated on. So maybe we need to rethink this idea of cheating, yeah? And figure out what is it that's setting us up for these painful scenes. Okay, that was a little bunny trail. Let's make room for moms to stop over functioning. As a young mother, for many years, I took on the burden of doing all the emotional work for my family. My husband did the work of paying the bills. Later, I joined him and also was equally paying bills and bringing in money as a school teacher. So he was in charge of the physical aspects of maintaining our 3D lifestyle, the mortgage, and all of that. Later, as I said, I joined him in that. But I was largely, nearly, almost completely responsible for all of the emotional and spiritual work of the family. I was always engaged in making sure everyone was okay, feeling all right. Are they comforted? Are they feeling loved? What's going on in the hearts of my kids and in their mind and psyche? And this is too much, right? For moms to feel responsible for everyone's emotional and spiritual health in the family. It's very, very sad and stressing to me that in these meetings that I do, that most and other meetings of other spiritual leaders that I've been a part of and attended, usually 75 to 80% of the people in the room are women. Where are the men? And I know some of you are out there because I know you and you're absolutely crazy amazing. And I'm so thankful that you're here, guys, but we need more of you. Okay. If these guys only knew how many beautiful, amazing, loving women were hanging around, they would show up, I bet. All right. Let's renounce a vow. I'll never be like my mother, or I'm just like my mother. Those are vows. We need to renounce those. So I want you to renounce with energy in your voice out loud. I renounce the vow that I'll never be like my mother. And I command every part of my body, soul, and spirit in all realms of time and space to forget this vow. All right, we'll do it one more time. I renounce the vow that I'll never be like my mother. And I command my body, soul, and spirit in all realms of time and space to forget this vow. All right, and Judah, I ask you to tag and treat every pain, every hurt, every judgment, every negative emotion, every negative and painful experience that this beautiful soul has ever had with their mother or as a mother. Judah, I ask you to tag and treat the word mother and every neural network association and disassociation with that word. And please do a massive change history and everything after that. So here is my challenge for you as we wind up. Create your own life, including your perspective of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a mother. Realize that you're more than a mother. You're more than a woman. Those are roles. For me, my identification with my role as a wife and mother have been the strongest egoic mind identifications that I have. And in order to become an enlightened being, you must drop all identifications. That doesn't mean you're not going to act responsibly in the role of a mother, but you drop your need to be attached to that role and to derive your identity from it. And so many times when I'm interacting as a wife or as a mom or grandmother, I will say in my inner being, I drop the role of mother. I am. I drop the role of wife. I am. And I allow myself to come into my I am state. Good. Another little exercise you can do is, can I let go of wanting and needing my mom's love? Can I let go of wanting and needing my mom's love and approval? Can I let go of wanting and needing to not have my mom in my life? Can I let go of wanting and needing to not have her approval and her love? Can I let go of wanting and needing my mother's love and approval? And you can sit and work with those questions in your inner being until you feel your resistance begin to melt. Yeah. Okay, my dears, I love you. Happy Mother's Day. Love on yourself. Love on your mom if you can. If you don't feel like you can, it's okay. Love on yourself. Be your own mom. Let your soul, which is wise, loving, infinitely connected to all the resources of heaven and earth, love your inner being and all your young, fragile parts. I love you. I'll see you next week.